Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Welcome to this episode of Alien Lizard Humanoids. Tonight we'll be looking at the case of Matthew Perry. We'll get started with introductions. Jeff?
My name's Jeff Pincin. I'm a licensed professional counselor in Delaware and Pennsylvania. And if you leave a comment or question, and we'll answer the questions potentially in a video short or something coming up hopefully pretty soon. And we respond to them. Comments often underneath the video as well. And if I hadn't become a counselor, I wanted to go to malls and wait for people to acknowledge me as famous. Turns out, not famous. So kind of a barrier to that. And it doesn't pay anything. So I really had to kind of go with my last choice, bottom of the list, and go with counseling.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah.
That is so rough. That the fact that you have to find a way to become famous before you could do that, that's crazy. That's right? Crazy.
I mean,
it's awful.
Yeah.
Mike?
Name's Mike Smith, also a professional counselor in the state of Delaware. I'm an expert in narrative therapy, geek therapy, and a self-styled expert in all things geek. If I hadn't become a counselor at one time in my life, I really wanted to get into statistical analysis and data reconfiguration.
Ah, yes.
Very mysterious job.
Yeah.
Problem is nobody knows what it is, how to do it, or what degree you need in order to start. So I had to go to counseling. I thought I was going to have a resurgence of that, a possibility of it when I was working as a grad student in grad school for some professor. I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
Probably not important.
It's not important. But we started doing, statistical analysis, data analysis, stuff like that. But it's still that data reconfiguration part that just couldn't nail down, and just had to settle for finishing out the grad school and becoming a counselor.
That's a shame.
It's terrible.
More shattered dreams.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. So Matthew Perry is a name that probably many people recognize, right? Well-known actor who was born in the U.S. but then grew up in Canada. Do we have a brief history of him available?
Yeah, sure. So Matthew Perry was born August 19th, 1969. His stepfather, journalist Keith Morrison. Interesting fact there. As a child, he misbehaved, he stole money, did poorly in school, and was drinking most every day by the age of 18. So the problem with alcohol really started age around 14, but really became very consistent by 18. He began acting at a young age and performed in various shows and movies throughout adulthood until his breakout role as Chandler in Friends from 1994 to 2004. And he was in other movies and shows since Friends ended. But obviously that's the one that he's known the most for Chandler. He was very open about his lifelong struggle with addiction to drugs and alcohol. He's been hospitalized and in rehab many, many times in his life and regularly went to addiction groups throughout his life. It was something that he was passionate about, helping others get better, and something that really tormented him throughout his life as well, that addiction just really plagued him in a very, very big way. Unfortunately, October 28th, 2023, Matthew was found dead in his hot tub in his home in Los Angeles. As of right now, they've not released a definitive cause of death, but he was in his hot tub, and they say kind of preliminary, he did drown. It appears as though he drowned. But initial autopsy reports were not really conclusive. They ruled some things out, but as of right now, November 7th, we don't know the exact cause of death at this point.
Yeah, he lived in a $6 million house in Pacific Palisades, if I'm not mistaken. Now, his net worth was around $120 million, and he had owned, I think, a $15 million house in Malibu, which is where I would have expected. Sure. That's where a lot of the really well-known, like he's not just an actor. He was a very well-known actor, a big money actor. So I would have expected Malibu, but if you look at the map.
He turned the Malibu house into a recovery house.
Right. Yeah, and really downsized. Like $6 million is a fortune, but to him, compared to his wealth, it wasn't much.
A fraction of it. Yeah.
And really, I mean, obviously the location is superior, but it's not really that impressive a house. It's a rancher, which is common in that area. It does overlook the ocean, headed south because the way the shore bends there north of Los Angeles, it's like north and south. So he's kind of far away from the beach, but can still see because of the hill.
Yeah, beautiful view, even though it's not as big a house.
Yeah, and the pool and the jacuzzi sit right behind the house and have that view. I think he actually posted an Instagram image of that view, or somewhere from the jacuzzi right before his death. So yeah, I mean, for the level of wealth he had, he was living, I guess you could say, a modest lifestyle relative to that. I mean, enormously privileged lifestyle compared to everyone else. But but for a big actor, I wouldn't expect a $6 million home in Pacific Palisades. Like that's really. So I don't know if that was just to like rough it, like from his perspective, like I'll just live here, or if that was a choice made for some other reason.
Sure.
He also had an assistant, and I guess that's the assistant that he sent out. I think it might have been a woman.
Yeah.
He sent her out, and she came back, and he was submerged, I think is what the reports indicate. So, but we don't, like you said, we don't know why. It might have been substances that impaired him, like Whitney Houston. It might have been like an MI, and he went under, when they drowned before something else killed him. Maybe he hit his head. Like, there's no way to know.
Right.
But small body of water accidents do seem to follow people who use substances historically.
Yeah.
Like we've seen many, many cases that when somebody drowns in like a bathtub or a pool, substances aren't usually far behind. But there's no way to know if that's what happened here.
Right.
Not yet, not until we get any kind of conclusive report.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure they'll tell us eventually, but there's no way to know based on the information we have now. They did say they didn't find any illegal drugs in the area.
Yeah.
He may have consumed them, but they didn't find any. But he had prescription medication, including a medication for COPD, which a little unexpected at 54.
Yeah, right.
That would not be I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's a common diagnosis for 54.
I don't know.
Yeah. He had a long history of medical problems that were pretty severe and almost died a few times.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's surprising how if you don't know anything about him, I guess if you don't know anything about his history with addiction and so forth, you hear that like almost died a few times, so many hospitalizations, and you're like, man, in his mid-50s to have experienced all of that is pretty remarkable. Like that's a very uncommon way of living. So it really speaks to potentially how many medical problems he was experiencing, and might speak to something like COPD or anything he might have been experiencing.
In his book, he talked about going in open houses, like that were for sale, and he would steal the prescription medication from the cabinets inside the bathrooms. And he had a particular strategy for it that he talked about in detail, where if it was expired, that would definitely go. And if it was current, he would only take some, as not to unduly jeopardize the owner.
Yeah.
Right.
That was.
He also mentioned in one of his books that some of his medical stuff started really early in life. And he talks about he believed that one of the major contributors for the development of his addiction started when he was still an infant. He was very colicky, very crying a lot, and there was very little they could do for it. So the doctors gave him barbiturates, which was not uncommon at the time.
Mm-hmm.
1969, 1970, it was not uncommon. Little young, but not, but especially with the severity of the colic and the severity of the pulmonary issues that were going on even then. It made sense to the doctors. Mm-hmm. And he credits that as an early priming for addiction. It's potential.
I think that could be an explanation. I also think that, if you look at kind of the personality traits that contribute to a desire to become an actor,
sure,
it's not necessarily super different than like skydiver, soldier, firefighter. I think it's somewhat different, in terms of like the attention-seeking part.
Right.
But there's an excitement-seeking component. Like they don't go up there because they want nothing to happen. Like they go and like they become theater majors and they try out for ads and shows and stuff because they want to be moving. They want to be active. They want excitement.
They want to be in front of crowds and recognized for
Yeah,
what they're doing.
And Matthew Perry in particular, he specifically said that he wanted stardom. Right, that was one of his things. Like it wasn't like he loved the theater and thought, okay, I'll do this if they're gonna twist my arm. He sought mega fame, not just fame. He wanted mega fame,
Right.
and amazingly got it.
A lot of that ties back to his childhood. Right, he was alone a lot of his childhood. His dad wanted to be an actor, so before he was 9 months old, his parents were divorced. His dad moved to L.A. to become an actor, and so he kind of followed in those footsteps. That was set up for him. But living with his mother in Ottawa, Canada, she wasn't home a lot. Neither was his stepdad. Like he had his grandparents were there, or his there were nannies occasionally, but that was especially in the early 80s. That was kind of the latchkey era, where he just he was old and at 10 or 11 years old. He's old enough to be on his own, quote unquote. So no more nanny. We don't have to have. Right, you can just walk home from school or ride the bus home from school and go home. And so, like, lock the door.
Fix yourself something to eat.
Yeah, fix yourself something to eat. Lock the door, or go. Make sure you do your homework. Go out and play. I'll be home later on. And I'm sure there were times when I'll be home later on was after he was already asleep. And
yeah, seems like not normal now, but back in the 70s, yeah, that was pretty standard.
Yeah,
no one really worried about serial killers coming by and. Or being held responsible if some terrible accident happened. Like it's just all that stuff was just swept under the rug. It was just you're a parent, you can do what you want to do.
So I mean, he had cravings for people paying attention to him because he didn't get a lot of it as a kid. I do remember the one story where he went to visit his father when he was 5 years old, and he was just put on a plane by himself and fly to L.A. And he even said, I think in his one of his books, that reason he really liked having apartments that overlooked cities was because it felt comforting. Because when he was 5, that was the most comforting sight, was looking out the window and seeing the city of LA spread out. And he knew he was there. He made it.
Yeah, well, that's a very common like scene in movies. Like Heat, the movie Heat had that house that overlooked the city. That sold not too long ago. I think it was over $1 million. Wow. Really tiny house. And it sat like on stilts. I don't know if you saw too much of that in the movie, but it was like out from a cliff and there was stilts holding it up. Man. But that's like the classic shot.
Entire neighborhoods of that.
Right, that's the classic shot. As you see the whole city of Los Angeles when there's not smog. Yeah.
When's that?
In the rare times when
the rare occasions when the smog parts, you can see the city.
But that's a commonly kind of filmed aspect of life in Los Angeles as like a Hollywood star. Yeah. So again, kind of that was the other surprising part with Pacific Palisades. I mean, it overlooked the ocean, but you would expect a view of Los Angeles to be in one of his houses. Again, with that kind of money, they usually buy a few.
He did have multiple houses.
Yeah,
though,
he did.
I believe. Yeah.
But that was his main residence at the end there. I don't know if he had any others that he was actively living in at the time, but just I'd be curious to know why he chose that.
Right.
I don't think it's right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm just curious why deviate so much from the other actors, other kind of.
I know that in one in one article I read, he was renting a house. I think it might have been the Pacific Palisades house that he was renting. And I can understand where, even with all of the money, the idea of, well, if I have to go in for 3 months into the hospital, I'm not going to be in this house for 3 months, but I'm still going to be paying money for it. If I go on a rental agreement, I can just release the house and somebody else can rent it or sublet it or something until I come out of the hospital. And with so many of those over the years, that being always a potential, I can see where he would just want to rent. And then the benefit of renting in that case is, well, I'm tired of this one.
Right.
I may go somewhere else.
Yeah.
I thought he bought that particular one, but there was a discussion about, like, he was a big fan of Batman, and I don't know if he bought or rented like some penthouse that he thought Bruce Wayne would like or something like that. It was a story about that. I think it might have bought that too. I think it was like 20 million or
Yeah,
something.
right.
Yeah. So, I think his royalties for Friends, I think that was about 20 million a year.
Wow.
I think that's what each of the 6 main primary cast members receives a year, even today because of the syndication.
Right.
But they made so much money during the original run of it. By the time they were in the 7th season, they were millions of dollars an episode.
Let's talk about that, right? So this was covered in the reunion show. I don't know if you saw that in 2021.
I didn't
There's
get
only
a chance
been
to.
one. But so Matthew Perry was, I can't remember the name of it. He was on this pilot about an airport, I think in the future.
LA 2194.
Yeah.
I think 2194 must have been the year, right?
It was because
yeah,
it was supposed to be set 200 years in the future from when it would have been in 1994.
So they showed in the reunion show, they showed clips of that.
Oh gosh.
And Awful does not capture it.
So it was if I remember correctly, it was an airport, and he was working to tell the aliens where to go or something.
It's kind of like a Men in Black.
It was
Remember Men in Black?
LA, it was LAX, but it was supposed to be about like the baggage handlers, and security of LAX. Of course, it was 1994, so there was no TSA model to go off of. They were just looking at the way the airports worked at the time, which was lax security, to say the least. Not that TSA does much nowadays other than theater, but that show was going to be bad, like really bad.
They did everyone a favor by canceling that.
But Matthew Perry had helped a friend of his to prepare for auditioning for the show Friends Like Us.
Well, it had a few names, right? It had Insomnia Cafe, one of 6 or 6 of 1 or something, and then Friends. I think that, of course, that was the final name.
Friends Like Us was on the script that he got.
Okay.
And I guess I just read an article about like his words. He was like it was called Friends Like Us, and then they told me it was just dropped to Friends, and I was like, well, that's just stupid. But I never claimed to be smart. But yeah, he had actually gotten cast for LA 2194, and they had filmed a few things, and he went to his agent and begged. I was like he'd heard that somebody had left. And he'd auditioned for Chandler, and they were getting ready to offer it to him. And he was like, "I need to get off of this LA thing. I need to get off the show." His agent was like, "No, they already measured you for the shirt. Like, they're gonna make that shirt for you. You got to stay."
The shirt's a pretty big deal.
And he's like, but no, this Friends Like Us is like that's gonna be better.
I'll pay you for the shirt. Trust me.
So he got the show.
Yeah. I think that the producer said something like they were worried that they had poorly written the Chandler Bing character because so many people auditioned and they didn't like anybody. Yeah. But then Chandler came and they realized it just took a certain talent.
Matthew Perry came and there was Chandler.
Right. Sorry, yeah, Matthew Perry.
See, that's the point.
Yeah, he really is. Well, he
the
said
point.
he is Chandler Bing, right? In one of the interviews, he said he wasn't playing Chandler Bing, but yeah, I mean, he's associated permanently with that character to that degree, right?
Well, that's because unlike the other actors, he did more of the writing for that character. He was the only member of the cast who was allowed to sit with the writers and sit in the writer room because he wrote his own jokes for his own character.
Yeah, the timing of his humor was very important to the show because he was like he was one of the main funny characters in terms of like telling jokes. They all did funny things, but he told jokes in the show. Like his character's kind of a smart aleck. Would always deliver the humor at the right time. So yeah, I could see that. But yeah, they started out at $22,500 an episode, I think, for the first season. I imagine it went up a little. I think like halfway through, somewhere around there, they were $500,000 or something, I forget. And then by 9 and 10, seasons 9 and 10, they were $1 million an episode. 6 cast members all getting $1 million per episode.
Doing like 22 episodes a season.
Yeah. Let alone the cast and the crew, the other cast and the crew and everything. Yeah. Such a huge budget for that show just spoke to how popular it was.
It's difficult to overstate the popularity of Friends. It really was a cultural phenomenon. There's nothing else like it at the time. You could argue Seinfeld. Seinfeld had a completely different strategy, relatively characters that weren't necessarily physically attractive versus the Friends cast, which has actually drawn ire because they're so attractive it seems unrealistic. So it's like Seinfeld's completely, both in New York, right, both set in New York, completely different way to go. Both successful, I think. Seinfeld mostly for the really great writing.
And I think that Friends actually holds up in a way that is independent of the setting, right? Like some of the situations and scenarios, most of them are fine, even today. If they had smartphones, it wouldn't change much of the plot. But there were a lot of episodes of Seinfeld where if they'd had cell phones, if they'd had smartphones, the whole episode would never have happened that way. Right? It would just been like, okay, I'm going to text Jerry. He'll be here in 5 minutes. I don't buy it. Let's get a booth. I'm really hungry. Okay.
Yeah. I think Seinfeld, it was a completely different style, but it wasn't based on the characters being necessarily attractive, right? Like, and I think the criticism of Friends, especially at the beginning, was like these are just good-looking young people that you stuck together. That's why it's successful. They don't have any talent. But then when you started seeing the shows, it was actually well written, and they played their characters so well, and it all just came together. It was a fantastic show.
Yeah, they didn't just play Friends on the show either. Actual friends, and they always said how much they felt like family in reality. So it really showed in the chemistry on set as well.
And despite the way, despite the horrible things that happened because of addiction. And the fact that Matthew Perry was in and out of rehabs the entire stint of,
I think he said he didn't remember seasons 3, 4, 5, 6, and maybe part of 7, something like that.
Right, like he didn't remember filming this because he was in and out. Like he would, he would show up, and the reason he knew he was at work was because he had a hangover, and he would just perform and do it. But then he was in and out of rehabs the entire time. But where I think the cast being young at the time was a boon for that because they rallied together around him, and that brought all of them closer. Whereas if they had been older, it would have been like, I'm sick of his crap, get him out of here. Right? Like, write him out of the show. Let's get him out of here. I'm sure that conversation was had more than once.
He had to have been thought of as a liability at some point.
Yeah.
They had to have known. Yeah.
But he also still showed up, like, and performed.
Yeah, he had some physical changes, you could tell. And he even said that. You could tell when I was...
You could tell if he was looking a little bloated around the face, that's because he was drinking a lot at the time, like around there. Like
if he was carrying weight, it was alcohol.
Yeah, if he was carrying weight, he was just drinking everything every day. When he started losing a lot of weight, it was because he was on cocaine.
Yeah.
Or pills or something.
Or something like that,
yeah. It was... It must have been pretty scary for the producers of that show and the network. He was definitely I imagine the one that they were really worried about because it was the advertising dollars were massive for that show.
He was also one of the ones who people identified with most, and people could look at Joey Tribbiani and just be like, nah, that's not me. Like, I'm smarter than that.
Well, and he played that. Joey wasn't unintelligent.
No.
Right? Matt LeBlanc brought that to the character.
Yeah, Matt LeBlanc is actually a pretty intelligent guy. But Joey is...
In the original Joey, I'm saying he wasn't written as unintelligent.
Right.
Matt LeBlanc changed that when he auditioned, and they loved it.
Right.
So he made the character stupid for the whole...
for the entire 10-year run. But people looked at that level of unintelligence, but also like just luck and good looks and fumbling through everything. It's like, it's fun and funny, but not relatable for general persons. And Ross was just like nobody wants to be Ross.
Right.
Nobody wants to be Ross. I admit to being a little bit like Ross, but I don't want to be.
Undesirable traits.
Right.
Yeah.
The insufferable know-it-all. I admit to being like that sometimes, but I don't want to be. But everybody knows, like Chandler, like the super anxiety just in a ball.
Yeah, and I think, Chandler was an explorer as far as his emotions, like in terms of his romantic feelings. Like he was uncertain, he was insecure. That relationship with Monica, I think, started when they went to London, which actually was filmed in London. That was the only time if the show was filmed anywhere but Los Angeles. Again, it took place in New York, but it was filmed in Los Angeles.
Right.
And they filmed it in London for that, and they had that scene where they pop up and they're like, oh, they're in bed, and everybody's like, the crowd goes crazy. That was the beginning of that. And I think that was really just initially a distraction to cool the Ross-Rachel dynamic, which was the central dynamic of the show, like in terms of sexual tension. But Chandler and Monica actually made that work as a viable relationship and took center stage for a few seasons. And so he was even more important for a while.
Yeah.
As playing that relationship. And there was the whole thing with like Tom Selleck was it was just really great storylines. And
so many stars just coming on the show. Tom
Bruce
Selleck
Willis
being one of them.
was Tom Selleck, Bruce Willis, I think was on the show, right? Brad Pitt.
Bruce Willis was on. Bruce Willis was on because he lost a bet to Matthew Perry on the set of The Whole Nine Yards.
Yeah, there was a just fantastic writing and acting to keep that together for 10 years.
Yeah.
But you think, in terms of Matthew, they must have become very close. I don't know. You remember the last episode where they all walked out of the spoiler alert for Friends?
It's hey, if you haven't seen it, you can stream it. Turn us off now. Go watch all 10 years of Friends.
Come back.
Then you come back.
Right.
We'll wait.
Yeah, we'll wait. This episode will be days
It's worth the
long.
wait.
Yeah. Right.
But when they kept the cameras rolling after they exited the room, because they put the keys down and all that, and they were like crying on the other side of that wall for a while.
Yeah.
Really, I think they at that point, and probably before that, they realized the seriousness and like the fan base and like how incredible their success was and how they'll never get that back. No matter what they do, they'll never get that dynamic back. Individually, they might have some success, but they were, as a unit, it was an incredibly successful show.
Yeah. Well, other actors have said similar things, like when they've reached their peak, they got their biggest movie or biggest show or whatever. Everything after that, they're like, some of them kind of really regret a lot of stuff, and I wish we could go back to this. But others kind of, I'm just going to do whatever I want. Like Daniel Radcliffe in Harry Potter. He's like, I had my biggest role, and I was pretty young, so now I'm just going to do whatever I want. And he did the Weird Al movie, and he's like,
that is the greatest biography of any person
really
ever.
It really
100% factual.
100%. There's
100% factual.
No,
absolutely
no lies in there.
Nothing is exaggerated or lied in there.
Not at all.
Wonderful.
But it was a wonderful
biography.
movie. Absolutely. I mean, it's incredible.
And Daniel Radcliffe did do a wonderful job.
He really did.
Portraying
And
Weird Al.
That attitude of, I'm just going to do whatever I want. I'm going to have fun with it. Really, I think works well, as opposed to, just trying to relive the glory days or, a time when you were more famous or better known or something like that. It's an interesting thing when you really reach that peak, and then what do you do next?
Matthew was the youngest cast member. They're all just like just a couple years older than me or so, 2, 3, 4 years older. I think all of them. He was about 3 years older, and I think he was around 35 when the show wrapped up.
Yep.
So imagine you're 35, you get $20 million a year, right? You're already worth like, I don't know what he was, probably 60, 70 million from all the direct payments from the show when he was on it.
Right.
He was also in, I think, 1 or 2 movies during the show's run, right? Like he had
The Whole 9 Yards, The Whole 10 Yards.
So there's a few different films. I'm sure
both of them with Bruce Willis. The Whole 9 Yards is way better.
It's actually a good movie.
It is. I really enjoyed that movie.
So, you're sitting at 35, you have more money than you know what to do with. And, he I think the studios really liked him. They kept casting him in sitcoms. He was like a sports writer or something. I saw the show when it was on. It wasn't great, but like I think he was like a sports writer in therapy, or I forget the name of that show.
Move On or
something like that.
Something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
And then he was it was like a
did
remake
a
of
resurgence of The Odd Couple.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that went for 3 3 seasons. I never saw it, but
Yeah, he was a primary writer on that show too.
wow.
Not only playing the lead, but he was primary writer.
Yeah, so I'm sure that paid well, and probably made him feel like he was doing something meaningful. Like Matt LeBlanc didn't do well after Friends. They gave him his own show,
They gave him Joey, and that did not do well.
it wasn't. Yeah,
He did have a good have a show on HBO, I think it was, for a little while. That was just like Matt or something like that, and he was playing a fictionalized version of himself.
I think when the main cast left Top Gear, didn't he fill in?
Yeah, he moved over to England.
He did a good job, but they hired this other guy.
Oh, the other presenters were terrible, and just like that's the thing. Top Gear in Britain had the greatest chemistry with Jeremy Clarkson and Richard Hammond, James May. They had the greatest chemistry. They'd been doing it for a while together, and when they left Top Gear and they just tried, BBC was scrambling to bring new people in.
Big name. I mean, they probably paid a lot for Matt LeBlanc, which is probably why it was him and one other person instead of 3.
Yeah.
But the other guy horrible. Matt LeBlanc was actually good on Top Gear, and I would have been very critical because I really liked the original 3. You know, like to me, trying to put anybody in their place was offensive, and I thought Matt LeBlanc still did well. Yeah. Although I was watching Grand Tour, of course, from that.
Grand Tour was those 3 guys still do stuff together. It's amazing, but that nobody can capture the energy and the humor that they have. America, it was a History Channel tried to do Top Gear with 3 other guys, and they put them through literally the exact same types of episodes. Where like we'll get these things, and it was horrible. Yeah. It was absolutely horrible.
It was unwatchable.
It was absolutely unwatchable.
I thought it was good. I gotta admit, I thought it was good. They got another one after that too. That one, not so much. But I honestly thought it was good. And I don't know. I thought that the differences in their personalities, I thought it worked for it. And I know that that's an unpopular opinion, but I'm sticking to it because I genuinely thought it was good. And the one guy,
we just have to remember, Feist, he still hasn't watched anything from Star Wars.
That's it. That's very
no, I've watched all of them. I just didn't want to. The one guy, Rutledge, has done a bunch of stuff since then. He did this thing called Lost in Transmission. Yeah, Lost in Transmission. It was really good too. So I thought it was pretty good, but I'll reserve my unpopular opinion.
We'll let you have your unpopular opinion. It is not the popular opinion.
No, it's not. It's not.
I tried to watch episodes of that because I was like, okay, well, it's Top Gear, and we'll try it.
I give it a shot.
It just didn't hit right for me.
Yeah,
and I didn't care for it.
If it's not Jeremy Clarkson going sideways, and what was that thing? The Renault Robin? What was that? What was that?
The Reliant Robin. The Reliant Robin. Just. It was three-wheel drive.
Everywhere he went.
It technically wasn't a car. It was a motorcycle.
Right.
It was a motorcycle.
It's a cheap license you could get in Britain. So like young people could afford them.
But the problem was they put the steering wheel as a single wheel in the front, like a tricycle, and then put extra off the side to make it look like a car. So anytime you turned, the whole thing just tipped. And if you're doing any sort of speed,
right,
and you were completely on your side. Yeah. If they made the steering wheels, and they did a lot of those today, with like Scorpions and things, right? You have the big drive wheel in the back, and then 2 steering wheels in the front. It's way more stable, and looks really cool.
Morgan 3-wheelers. I think I've seen them around here in Delaware. A few people have them. Yeah, they're not. There's no top.
Right.
So. Not good in the rain.
No, but in the summertime, when you're heading down to the beach, you get big old beach tires on them.
I wonder if they have a trunk. I'd be surprised.
Not really.
Yeah. Your pockets.
Again, they're motorcycles. Just
that's true.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know how we got to Top Gear, but
Matt LeBlanc.
Oh, right. Matt
LeBlanc.
Yeah. So he didn't have. So we look at it, right? Just go through it since we're doing that.
He didn't have many big movies after
Matt LeBlanc did. I liked Matt LeBlanc. This one might have been when Friends was on, but Lost in Space, a movie that universally hated. I actually thought he was pretty good at it.
I actually liked Lost in Space.
Now wait a minute.
But that's because
when I said I liked something, you got I'm just kidding.
The Lost in Space movie, if I look back at it now, it's really dated. But when I watched it at the time, I really liked it because I never watched the original Lost in Space from the 60s. So I was like, okay, this is new. This is great. New sci-fi stuff. Awesome. Okay, is there going to be a sequel? Everybody hates it. No? Okay.
Yeah.
But then Netflix did Lost in Space series.
Right.
That was phenomenal.
Which was pretty good, yeah. I would agree. I would agree. I feel like so many of those shows, the early episodes, the early seasons were a bit better. Was it 3 seasons or 4?
I think it was four.
Yeah, the first season I really liked, and then I felt like they struggled a little, but it was still good. And the special effects were excellent.
Oh, yeah. Special effects on that one were great. The Netflix show.
Right.
Not quite as good in the 1990s movie, but for the time, they were cutting edge special effects. They were.
Yeah, so if we look, that's Matt LeBlanc. If we look at Courtney Cox, she had a few different projects. I don't think she's just an actor. She does other.
She does a lot of other stuff.
If it's writing or producing or whatever, but she does other stuff, right?
Plus, she does Scream. She had the Scream series. I think that was in the early 2000s was when that started. But she got a couple of them that came out in the last few years.
David Schwimmer, I think, has been in a few movies, but he was in like Band of Brothers, I think, when Friends was still on, a small role. Yeah. Band of Brothers. He was in a movie about cosmetic surgery, I think, as well, like based in Los Angeles. I think he might have been in an O.J. Simpson movie. He was one of the attorneys.
Okay.
That's pretty much all I can think of.
Can't think of much from Schwimmer, but
Lisa Kudrow's been in a few things. But Lily, you think about the movie she's in, it's kind of like she's not the star.
Yeah.
A lot of them. Like she's there, like they're casting her, but she's not.
She had a bunch where she was the primary early on. Like right during Friends and during the immediate following Friends. But yeah, over the last few years, she hasn't.
Yeah, not too much. And then, of course, Jennifer Aniston,
Jennifer Aniston.
The biggest star. And interesting, I think the one that people, if they look at the cast, say, who is the weakest in terms of acting, it was definitely Jennifer Aniston. And, the criticism is that she's playing herself.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And none of the other characters really are. Not really. Maybe Matthew Perry a little.
He would always talk about how he was.
Yeah.
There's a lot of similarities and
but his, I guess his character was more talented, right? So he was more talented. His character was more talented. Whereas, I think Jennifer's character was the most unlikely, or was the most unlikable of the group.
Well, she started out as the most unlikable from
like
the
arrogant
door.
And
like very much like she was the uptown girl. She was the rich one who stepped down.
Right. Yeah, Rachel Green, I think, had like a dentist lined up to marry or something. That was actually the first episode, right?
Yeah,
like
she ran away from the wedding. Like,
Barry or something. Was it Barry?
Something like that.
I forget. He came back a few times, that character, the dentist. Yeah. But yeah, so it's funny. Like you look at all the people, you would think, okay, who's going to make the big money? I would have guessed Matthew Perry and Matt LeBlanc. Like if I didn't know, just in 2004, this ends. Bet on each person, and I would have said Matthew Perry and Matt LeBlanc would have been like movies, more shows. I would not have picked Jennifer Aniston, although she already at that point, she already was being cast in movies. But if I didn't know that, and she went on to be extremely famous. Yeah, she's. Yeah. I don't know her net worth, but I'm guessing it's
up there.
It's exceptional. Yeah.
Yeah, she really positioned herself in in certain ways to be able to kind of, I guess, get a different perception of herself. It's not with that Rachel character, but in many different roles. And so I don't know what she did. I'm sure there was a lot of agents and things involved, but she seemed to be very intentional about finding different roles and really kind of growing the brand, I guess, away from Rachel, although it's an important character for her, but into the character of her, something that was much different than what she played on Friends.
Man, $320 million.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
$320 million.
Yeah.
She owns her own production house, Echo Films.
Okay.
She gets a lot of brand endorsements, of course, and the royalties and things, but she also owns her own hair care brands and other ventures. Like she's not just living on the on.
She's
on
not
the
waiting for
residual.
that check every month.
Yeah, she's not just living on the residual. She's
She's not sitting by the mailbox.
Right.
Where is my
I
money?
need it. I need it.
Yeah.
she's got the money coming in.
Yeah, I mean, they're all wealthy, but yeah, she did by far the best. I believe that's true.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, you have this kind of strange, situation where sometimes actors work their whole careers to get cast in that big movie,
Yeah.
or TV show,
Right.
and these guys coming out at 35 or so,
Mm-hmm.
were already multimillionaires, were already incredibly famous.
Right.
It must have been, in a strange way, kind of a letdown to go home after that last,
Yeah.
maybe not initially, you take a break, but over time, like, wow, what do I do now?
Yeah.
What's ever going to live up
Right.
to that feeling? And for Matthew, that was drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And that really would not surprise me at all,
Right.
based on what we know about substance use.
For him, the drugs were there the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were his constant companion. But like Jennifer Aniston, $320 million. I got this list right here. Courtney Cox is second at 150. There's a huge gap
Yeah.
between them.
That's a lot of money.
Lisa Kudrow is at 130. David Schwimmer and Matthew Perry both also at 130, approximately $130 million. And Matt LeBlanc is at 85.
Yeah, I'm surprised he's so much lower. But I guess he just has not done a lot.
Yeah, I don't think he hasn't done a huge amount. Episodes. The TV series he was on was Episodes after Joey.
Okay.
But he was playing like a fictionalized version of himself on Episodes. But yeah, it didn't last for a huge long time. I think he's doing more of the residuals than anything. I just don't think he's put a lot of investments into things. Everybody else kind of invested in things.
Mm-hmm. Well, with that much money.
Still $85 million.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money.
Oh, it's nothing, right? Oh, 85 million. What's this guy doing?
I mean, if we're comparing the Friends cast, where their current bankroll is, he's a long way away from $320 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's still $85 million. Like
That's still, comfort for his entire life, and he can do whatever he wants for his entire life. Yeah.
and I'd take 10% of that and be happy.
So they wrap up, and they're all looking for other work, or maybe not, but they're done. They probably had some sense that syndication was going to be kind, right? Based on other shows that have done,
Right. Right.
similarly in terms of their performance. So I think for someone who really craves stardom, who loves being a leading man, it must have been pretty challenging for Matthew.
Yeah.
Even though he was recast right away in other shows, I don't, you're not going to get that back.
Right.
No, you're not going to get the Friends chemistry back. Like you can't, when you go out on a note and you do well, even if it's been doing well, even if they'd been, like we saw with Joey, there was a spinoff. It didn't capture this. It didn't carry any of the same chemistry with it. I mean, and they should have known that.
Right.
Hollywood should have known that wasn't going to work.
And things rarely do when you try to capture something that was just so good and so powerful.
Right, but we can go back to the 1980s and see where that didn't work for after MASH. MASH is one of the longest running. It was one of the longest running, and probably one of the most poignant and well written. Many episodes are well
humor
written
everywhere.
Dark humor, gallows humor, and everything. It was probably one of the best written shows. I still will watch episodes of that when it comes up. I'll just watch MASH. And the final episode is so poignant, so tear-jerking, meant to be. And then, the very next season, they get some of the cast members back together and be like, here, this is after MASH. This, Klinger's back in America with Colonel Potter, but they're now in a private practice or hospital or whatever. And it was just nobody watched it. Nobody watched it. It could not recapture that chemistry that they'd had in the show. Like they couldn't do it. They couldn't do a resurgence of Friends. Like, where's everybody now? Friends 2, right?
Yeah.
They couldn't do it. Like some shows can get away with that. Like Futurama has been rebooted like 4 times.
Well, look at Cheers and Frasier.
Frasier's been rebooted. You know, after so many years. I didn't like Frasier.
Oh, I love Frasier.
Initially, like when it was ran, I watched it, and there were things I liked about it, but I never liked the character of Frasier. And like then I started studying psychology and trying to become a therapist, and I'm like, Frasier's the worst. Like, please don't. No,
pretentious.
No, he's so pretentious, and so unethical in like everything, everywhere. Like, just the most unethical practitioner ever. And it also further perpetuates the myth that therapists are all psychiatrists.
Right. Yeah. Though it wasn't a perfect show, but I think, Kelsey Grammer's just such a great actor and such a great voice. Like Sideshow Bob in the...
Oh, yeah. Kelsey
the
Grammer.
last Treehouse of Horror had him back for Sideshow Bob.
I haven't gotten a chance to see the most recent Treehouse. I saw that it was up on Hulu today. I was like, I'm going to watch that. And then I had to come do filming. Otherwise, I'll be watching it right now.
Did you guys hear that Homer's no longer going to be
yes, he's not going to be choking. He's not going to be choking
anymore?
Bart anymore.
Yeah.
Times have changed.
Times have changed. He did mention that his hands are really strong because of that. Like, in the first episode of this
See,
season.
Marge, it paid off. Yeah.
So you're watching Simpsons more.
I ran there was some other show I was watching, and that got done, and so I was like, I don't know, it showed up, and I was like, well, that's great, I can watch that.
Yeah. Another spinoff that was successful was Laverne and Shirley many years ago.
Yeah, there are some successful spinoff shows, but you can't count on it.
Well, and you're not going to capture, like, Frasier took one character, a great character from Cheers, and then moved him to a completely different spot with other great characters. They weren't trying to recapture Cheers.
Right.
They were trying to capitalize on that one character that people really wanted to see more of. And it worked.
Yeah.
But other attempts, imagine like Seinfeld. Imagine if they came out with a show like Newman. Let's follow Newman around.
No.
Been his postal.
Let's not do that. Let's not do that.
Like in the first episode, you would hope like Jerry Seinfeld make a cameo or something.
Right.
Like, he'd driving well, he's in New York, so he's probably walking.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And delivering the mail and like sees Jerry for a minute. That's pretty much
And
it.
just move on. Yeah.
That's all Seinfeld's, that's the only time he's going to be in the whole show.
Delivering mail like to the restaurant or something, to the diner that they go to or something like that. Yeah.
Knocking on Kramer's door.
Right.
And you hear shuffling, but he never answers. Like, we don't really have a lot of budget, so we can't get any of the good characters back.
Also, he's been blacklisted. There's no, we don't bring Kramer back.
Right. Well, yeah, he had some other.
He had some other issues.
Yeah, some other his comedic work. Yeah. But yeah, so when the news of let me start here. When you think about the cast of Friends and their time after the show, there really wasn't much concern like that one of them was going to die. And then after the reunion show, that drastically changed, right? So you looked at it and thought, well, I hope that no one dies. Yeah. But I think that Matthew probably is the greatest risk just based on what he disclosed in the show. And I think, too, in the reunion show, the cast seemed surprised that he was suffering so much when the show was filming. But other times, they made it sound like they were supporting him. So I felt like it was kind of a mismatch. There. But I lost my train of thought because there was a dog on my lap.
Mismatch between
it happens. There's a mismatch between what everyone said they were watching and seeing and what he said he was going through, and that doesn't surprise me at all because I've worked in substance abuse so much that I've seen it. I've seen family members come in and be like, "Well, I knew things were bad, but I didn't know it was this bad." And they'll sit there and tell horror stories about the things that they've seen about their the person that they're that's struggling with the addiction, they're like, well, they stole this from me. They stole that from me. I've bent over backwards trying to make sure that they get this, that, and the other. I don't know what else I can do. And then their loved one says, well, this is what I've been going through. And they're like, oh my God, I didn't know. Like they're aware of what's happening in a general sense, but unless you're living it, there's an inside part that's missing that can't.
Right.
You can't.
I think part of it too with Matthew Perry was that, he was talking about the insecurity he had. Like he felt under pressure to tell jokes that were like to get the audience, the live audience to laugh. And that was like a devastating, crushing pressure. And I don't think they didn't seem to remember it that way or understand that. So he was clearly hiding some of his feelings pretty well at the time. But either way, when you when you saw him, I think he had some dental work recently, which probably made him look even worse. But during the reunion show, he seemed not physically well, and not mentally like sharp. And again, the dental work could explain a lot of that, but there was this sense that the other five looked vibrant, and you can't only tell so much by looking, but they looked healthy, like normal. And Matthew was the one that stood out as like, he seemed distressed. And I think the part that really struck me was, at $2.5 million per person, which is what they got for that, they were definitely wanting them to look good. Like that was with all the makeup, and that was with like the maximum effort to improve an optimized physical appearance. And that's how he looked. So, still though, you think, okay, he's got a lot of city miles on him or whatever, but he also probably has access to great medical care, and hopefully things will work out. And for 2 years, seemed fine.
Well, one of the problems was he had so much great access to medical care. As I think at one point, when they were filming Friends, he said he had 8 doctors going, and they didn't know about each other, so he was going and getting pills, various types of pills, OxyContin and Xanax and all sorts of other meds, just to be able to take them. And they didn't know. He had so much money and so much good health care that he could afford the best doctors. And even if some of those doctors knew what was going on, they were, okay, but it's Matthew Perry and he's got money and I could use a new Porsche. So they went along with it. And
double-edged sword, I guess.
Just the sheer amount of damage that those drugs can do to the body and the mind, and getting sober is not easy.
And staying that way. And I think that was another struggle. So there's just this sense that he had really been hard on his body. He would have been, I guess, 52 when the Friends reunion special came out, and he looked by far the oldest. And again, he was the youngest cast member, like by far, 10 years, 15 years older. And just, I remember thinking to myself, I just hope he takes care of himself.
Well, that's where like you can generally tell what kind of drugs people use a lot. Which one thing that Matthew Perry said is that he had never did heroin. And that was a thing he was proud of, that he had never gotten to doing heroin, but he did use a lot of opioids, but a lot more was in alcohol, which kind of, it's just poison. So it kills a lot of the body. So there's that pickling agent there that makes him a little bit older, but also like all the stimulants. Stimulants will make people look older way faster than any other drug. People who use meth for 2 years and look 10 years older than they actually are.
It's frightening. It is. And you don't want to, what you definitely don't want to do is discourage people from stopping. Like you don't want to say, wow, you take meth for a while and that's it. You can certainly recover mentally and to some degree physically, but there's no question that it's devastating. There's no way to get around it. It's like doing time in prison. People go for 5 years, they come out, they look 20 years older. There's no way to make that, yes, you're happy you're out, but you probably lost 20 years if you're there for 5 because of the aging dynamic in prison. It's startling. I've even seen it for people just in a few months in prison.
Not to mention the with drugs, the substances, the up and down of using and then crash down from right afterwards. That takes a toll on the body too. Like there's a lot of there's an elasticity that goes along there that gets broken after a while. And so people who have been struggling with substance use for many years tend to they look older than they would be. Yeah. I saw some clients in inpatient who I would have sworn they were in their late 60s. And they're like, I'm 41. I'm like, you're younger than I am? You're the same age as I am, but you look like 20 years older than me. And I don't look young with this gray and this beard. But people generally, the drugs can have a huge impact on a person's body and the functionality of their brain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Matthew Perry was very active in drug use for a long time. And I think if he had stopped, whenever that was, season 6 or 7 of Friends, whatever, and stayed, I guess he did stop at that time, but stayed off the drugs, probably would have been, he had some medical problems, I know, but he probably would have been mostly all right. Yeah. But returning to them afterward, like you said, Mike, people go in and out, it's devastatingly difficult.
Right. Really caught up with him appearance-wise, really caught up with his physical.
His whole speed, in the reunion show, you really see it, just wasn't reacting. He didn't seem sharp like he was as Chandler. Mm-hmm. The spark was gone. Yeah. And I think that was one of the criticisms that, I don't remember seeing this, but some of the shows, like The Odd Couple one, I think there was some critics of that, or one of the shows he did where they say he just looked tired all the time.
I think it's because he probably was tired most of the time.
Probably.
Yeah. Especially with trying to do a job that you did during a time when you used heavy use. The brains are pattern machines, right? You set a pattern of using while doing writing and acting. And then you try and go into a situation where you're not doing that, your brain and body are going to demand the same kind of energy. And when when you're not using drugs, it takes way more energy and you get way more tired way easier. Plus, it's entirely likely that he was struggling with other mental health stuff at the time, depression. He struggled with anxiety his entire life. And that brings me to it was probably mostly post-traumatic stress disorder. We talk about now the definition of PTSD being exposure to actual or threatened incidences with death or serious injury or other things that I'm not going to mention. But being alone by yourself as an 8, 9, 10-year-old kid, especially if you staying up watching scary movies. It doesn't seem like that much, but it can trigger the imagination to go. And then you repeatedly left alone over and over and over again. That can become, even if it's imagined, a threat of death and serious injury. And just knowing that, hey, nobody's going to be here. If I fell down these stairs right now and broke my arm, nobody would be here to take me to the hospital. That thought repeatedly can be very trauma-inducing, and then struggling with that and no outlet for it.
The realization that I'm all alone, and that's the way it's going to stay for a while. It can really stick with someone and really cause your mind to go and really wander and can really do some damage. Yeah,
and that often leads to substance use early in life. I mean, the fact that he was given barbiturates when he was a baby could easily help form some of the neural pathways for addiction, but also having that trauma, that neglect. I don't want to say it was neglectful of his parents because it was part of the culture of the time, but that isolation, that loneliness, that feeling that there is no safe place in the world leads to a very traumatic reaction. And then alcohol or drugs can make that feeling go away. And that's the benefit of them. I'm not saying that drugs are good, but they certainly have a benefit when one is seeking self-medication.
That's why people do it.
In the short run.
Yeah,
Way better, way better options.
Yeah.
Way better options.
In the short run, I've had people describe it as the most incredible feeling ever. And, I think what happens, though, is people chase that first high.
Yeah.
The first high, I don't know what it's like, but I imagine it is good based on how it's described. But you can never quite get it back. If it was a 10, you can get like an 8.
Yeah.
And then a few years later, you're 6.
You might get to 9.5.
But
You
still,
might get
it's
to
not
9.5. That's
10.
still not 10.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Because the brain has a great way of purging the dopamine. Like it realizes that shouldn't have happened. That's not a natural thing. The dopamine rush should not have continued. It gone that high. So it prepares to, clean it up quicker. So the next time your brain cleans it up quicker, so you don't get to the same level of high.
And eventually you don't feel good at all. Right? You take the drug just to be neutral.
Right.
And then at some point you take it to feel bad, but not as bad as you would without it, which is,
Feel
to me,
less
one of the
bad.
most pathetic places a person can be. Think about, like, I'm feeling horrible, and I just wish I felt bad.
Right.
So I use drugs to feel bad. Yeah. That's where they get. And
then they start using more in order to try and not feel bad. They try and get back to normal. And that's what Matthew Perry said during some of the seasons. He was just trying to get to normal so he could perform. And then, imagine like if you don't get enough to feel normal, you're still feeling bad while you're expected to perform.
Right.
That's where some of that, the more of that anxiety comes from. Like, I'm not feeling good. I'm gonna suck tonight. And if I start sucking really bad, they're gonna fire me. I'm gonna lose everything. Yeah. That anxiety snowballs real quick. And then it's, let me go use more so that I can get rid of these thoughts.
Yeah, it'll take care of the anxiety temporarily.
Right. Until it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. In which case it comes back worse. It's terrible. But you think, I was watching, I thought this was interesting. I was watching some videos on social media, and there's these people in Los Angeles who they'll take a camera. There's quite a few of them. And they'll go around and basically, I don't want to say harass, but like they'll approach stars. They're usually actually not terrible. They'll just be like, hey, what's going on? And usually, it's like bodyguards right in their face, and nothing happens. But with certain ones, they'll be like, I'll sign an autograph for you, or I'll talk to you for a minute, whatever. I saw one with Matthew Perry, and he had these two like CIA agent or like Secret Service agent looking guys. I think they had the ear things, and and they're like, moving people out of the way. And he's like, he signed things. He was nice. He wouldn't answer questions though. Like somebody asked him like how much he lost at a casino recently or something. He wouldn't answer. But I remember a while back seeing one on Tom Sizemore, who technically speaking was at least as good an actor as Matthew Perry. Tom Sizemore had, I think more classical training, but he had also an incredible drug problem.
Yeah.
And when he got approached by those guys, he was like, he wouldn't stop talking. He's like, yeah, I got this project coming up. And I remember thinking, what a juxtaposition, right? You have two people who are similarly talented. Tom Sizemore was never really, he wasn't financially successful in the end. Like for his death, he wasn't doing too great. Matthew was always successful. And once he had friends, he was always successful. And Tom was desperate for attention, desperate to say he was getting better. Matthew was much more confident. You see that difference. Yeah. But the difference that really strikes me is just, the money they had. But they were both in the same position, but Tom Sizemore looked desperate. Yeah. And Matthew didn't. Not completely.
Sure.
I thought he was in bad shape, but in many ways you could say, well, he's doing really well. You could see like he was functioning, like he wasn't like, let me tell you about my latest movie. Yeah. Random person with a camera. Let me talk to you for a half hour.
Yeah.
He had some dignity. Right? Like,
whereas Tom was trying much harder and
really desperate. Yeah. And what he was talking about, the project he was talking about was like I wouldn't even call it a B movie. Like, I mean, really, it was just painful to see how far someone can fall from like, I think Saving Private Ryan was probably his peak, Tom Sizemore. Yeah. And he was paid pretty well for that movie. And to go, on the streets of Los Angeles entertaining people with cameras. But yeah, I think Matthew hit it, and I think that's what probably hit the friends the hardest, or partially, was like they thought he was doing well.
Yeah.
And everybody said he was turning a corner. You heard that, like published over and over. He was turning a corner. Things are going well. He was playing a game called
Fallout?
no, not a video game. He was playing a physical game, pickleball.
Pickleball. Yeah.
Yeah, he was like obsessed with pickleball, playing it every day.
Well, that's because early in his life he played tennis, and
He was good. He was very good at it.
He was really good at it, but he found out that as good as he was at tennis in Canada, he was not good enough to be professional in the United States, which is what he'd wanted. But that's when he kind of turned to acting. Because he thought for a while tennis was going to bring him the acclaim and the focus, and it did from the people in his general life. But he turned to acting because of that. But pickleball is a lot like tennis, but it doesn't require quite as much movement.
Right.
Which I think at 54 and having been ravaged by drugs for a long time and health issues, that would have been something like, oh my, it's like tennis. It takes me back to my youth, but I don't have to worry about being as active with it. So he really loved the pickleball for that reason. But he
That's
also
a great sign, the physical activity.
Yeah.
Again, you would think that.
Right. You would think he was turning the corner.
Great sign for survival.
And I think that one of the things that he grounded, and one of the things he didn't, I think one of the reasons why we didn't see more things from him, like he did things, but I don't think he ever pushed to do things to try and recapture friends, or at least that level of fame. Like he probably could have done a few more movies and pushed himself a little bit further up there. He probably could have invested in a few things, and still had like just straight up lines of directly the cartels for different drugs pipeline right into his home, just like money going out, but still like bringing money in faster than he could have spent it on drugs. He could have pushed to do that, but he didn't. And I think one of the things he realized was that chasing that acclaim, chasing that wanting everybody to look at him and wanting everybody to see him, that was just as much of an addiction as the substances, and that he felt better, like he would going to a mall and just wanting people to recognize him for being Chandler. That became such an issue for him that he stopped. Like he had to pull back from that. Signing autographs, obviously, like he's still going to do that. He's not going to be a angry person about it. Yes, sure, I'll sign your autograph if you're coming up to be able to sign your autograph, but he doesn't engage. He doesn't become he doesn't do what Chandler would have done.
Right. He's not in character.
He's not in character anymore. He's like, I'm Matthew Perry. I've got to be me. I can't get involved in, because if he engages too much with the fans, he then starts chasing it again.
Right.
Yeah. Plus those guys with him, I'm sure they weren't the only ones who were walking with him.
No, he had an entourage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he also went with a lot of sober companions, other people who either had struggled with addiction or were medical in nature, who would keep advising him, "Well, don't do that." Like, no, drugs are not good.
Money purchased solutions for him, and money also purchased the problem. The money was coming from the same place.
Right.
So it's like he was in the same game that every substance user plays, but it was higher stakes on both sides. He had massive access to recovery. Some of the best clinicians. Yeah. Probably even like experimental programs and everything, residential programs. Right. But he also had the money to buy whatever he wanted. Yeah. You look at like Michael Jackson. It's not that much different. Right, like what he was doing with the drug access at the end was like, it was phenomenal. He had his own dedicated physician. Yeah, right. It was giving him
unlimited. Yeah,
yeah. It was so. I think there's a point where you just the money's wonderful, but it doesn't actually solve the problem.
Right. And the fame is wonderful, but it's not going to solve a problem, or the success, or the feeling you get from a successful anything, or it's not going to solve anything.
Yeah, I view it as very separate. Like, some people have been critical of Matthew Perry. Like, why should I feel sorry for this guy who's worth $120 million and had everything handed to him? Like, at 35, he had the world in front of him and anything he could have wanted. at that age. Why should I feel sorry? And my answer to that, well, you don't have to feel sorry for him. But my answer would be, I think it's completely separate. I think him as a substance user is separate from Matthew Perry as an actor.
Yeah.
The money doesn't do you any good.
You could say the same thing about anybody in addiction. You know, if they even have a successful job, you know, and they're making a good amount of money for themselves, and you know, why should I feel sorry for them? You know, they should just do X, Y, and Z. Well, you know, it's not as easy as that. And even though they may have the money to go to rehab or something like that, or they may have the support to do so, it doesn't make it any easier. You know, it doesn't make the addiction any easier, or any harder, any easier to beat or anything. So whether it's, you know, millions of dollars or whether it's $0, it's still an incredibly difficult thing and such a challenge in one's life, whether it's, you know, no matter their circumstance.
Yeah, overall, I do feel sorry for Matthew. You know, you get the sense that we got to know him a little bit over his career, you know, as people watching his, mostly friends, but other things. And we're rooting for him and knew that he had serious life-threatening issues. And then ultimately, you know, to drown, just a horrible end. Yeah. And, you know, I wish it could have been avoided.
I have my hopes that that substances were not involved. That he was either an accident or and that it happened quickly. You know, if it was an aneurysm or something, could have been potentially related to earlier drug use.
Right.
Either, you know, with COPD or from other substances. But he was struggling with a lot of diseases, and the one that he struggled with most was the disease of addiction. And I recently did catch a clip of him on the BBC with someone, I don't remember who it was, who had written a book and said that addiction is a choice. And Matthew Perry responded, he's like, my first drink, that's a choice. But after the first drink, I have this allergy, the disease kicks in, and I can't stop. Once I take that first drink, which is why I have to do all of these things to keep myself from having that first drink. And that's very, very true, because the brain chemistry and the brain formation is changed by substance use when it becomes the disease of addiction. I've told hundreds of people in inpatient setting that same thing. Like the early in life, when you first decide to pick up a drink, usually around age 15, we found that
right.
The average age of first use is around 15 years old. That's a choice. And at 15, your first few drinks, those are choices. Going to parties, that's choices. By the time it becomes the disease of addiction, the choice is taken out of it. The brain requires that substance in order to continue existing. And it's going to tell you, you have to have it in order to live. You know, I was told people about, I used to smoke cigarettes. 15 years I smoked cigarettes. I quit in 2015 when I was in grad school. And so it's been like 8 years, something like that, since I had a cigarette. But I used to tell people when I was an inpatient, I said, like, I know exactly what it's like to get up from camping out in the middle of the woods, go out of the cabin, great cool, like, you know, then like 53 degrees outside. It's really nice. You got a jacket on, crisp, cool air. And my first instinct is, I got to get that nicotine in my lungs because that's more important than breathing this nice, fresh air that's all around me. You know, nowadays I go outside and be like, ooh, take a nice deep breath. And it's a nice, refreshing thing. But the brain would tell me, like, nicotine is more important than air. And that's the thing that a lot of people don't understand about addiction is that substance becomes more important than breathing.
Yeah, and I think for some people, you know, they look at Matthew, you know, and they say, well, he made decisions that may have, you know, led to his death. And even if he didn't die in that jacuzzi, he was in bad shape because he made bad decisions. But I think sometimes it's a calculation that substance users are, you know, they know the math.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, if I die young, at least I'm having fun. And they tell themselves that, like, okay, I'll just take my chances. Yeah. You know, like, life wouldn't be worth living without the drug. You know,
I think that's early on when the drug is still making them really happy.
right? When it's still working.
By the time they get to the point where they're trying to not to be sick, it's like, I don't want to die. I just don't want to feel bad. I'm using this just because I don't want to feel bad, and I don't want to die. Because again, with the withdrawal, especially with opioids, the withdrawal is like, you feel like you're gonna die.
It's unpleasant.
Really, really unpleasant.
Yeah.
It's like the flu, but like worse and just physically terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And so people they just end up going to use because they can't stand that feeling anymore. Alcohol withdrawal, which again was one of Matthew's problems for a long time, that's way worse. It's not that it necessarily feels worse, but it can lead to seizures.
Mm-hmm.
And grand mal seizures can kill. It also can lead to all sorts of blood pressure issues. There's a reason that people coming down from heavy alcohol use are given a Valium taper to help to mitigate that and control the seizures in case they happen. And alcohol itself can do so much damage to different parts of the body and the brain. It's a terrible, terrible drug. I think it's the worst one.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about before, alcohol's in a tricky spot because a lot of people value it for recreation. They don't necessarily misuse it. It has religious significance to people. It's woven into the culture. It doesn't seem like banning it would work, although
it didn't work before.
Yeah, prohibition, right? I mean, but I don't know. I mean, sometimes I look at it and I think I just don't see the point of it. Like I get it that there are millions of responsible users. I get it, but they don't need it, right? But then the argument is, well, why should we lose something we enjoyed because substance users can't stop or don't stop?
Sure.
Yeah, and it's a fair point. You don't want to get too much into the mindset of, well, a small percentage of people misuse something. Let's ban it for everybody.
Right.
I wish we could ban it for people who use.
Right.
Irresponsibly. I wish there was a way to say, like a judge to say, you know what, in your case, Mr. Smith, not you, just I'm using the Mr. Smith term.
Jones.
Mr. Jones. In your case, Mr. Jones, you can't ever drink again, and I can enforce it somehow.
Right.
So
selectively, just no more alcohol for people. Yeah.
That would require, I think that might require passing some legislation that requires alcohol distributors or sales to have specific, you have to ID.
No, I got an idea.
Have to scan it.
I got an idea. Have you been watching the activities of Elon Musk lately? Oh no, my producer's not happy. So
I'm not a big fan of Mr. Musk.
Yeah,
at his X platform is going downhill.
I have mixed feelings about him, but he's exceptionally wealthy.
Yes,
and he can make things happen that other people can't.
Right.
So he's all these projects. He's got the truck, right? He's got space stuff too. SpaceX, but also he's like really looking at like future space. But there's been a few articles, not many, but he's working on an automaton. Working on a cyborg.
Okay.
Not a cyborg, a robot. Yeah. Robot. I call it automaton. I forget the name he gave to it. Optimus or something.
That makes sense.
Something like that.
That's definitely makes sense.
It's supposed to come to market in 2027.
It's part of the truck.
And it's what?
It's a transformer. Optimus Prime is a transformer.
That's right. It's
Turn it to a truck.
So
and he's working on the Cybertruck, and
it's going to transform.
It's going to transform into the robot.
So it's going to be in 2027. It's supposed to come out. It's going to be $20,000 for the automaton, and it reminds me.
Every billionaire will have one.
What's that?
Every billionaire will have one.
Yeah. Well, I think even people who aren't necessarily wealthy will save up or borrow money to get their own automaton. Like
the producer said that. Dr. Grande will not be getting one.
That's not allowed.
No automaton.
I wouldn't mind getting one, but I still have car payments in 2027, so I'm not getting a $20,000 robot.
But here's what I was thinking, right, for this robot, is that it could enforce all types of rules, right? You could have a robot like an ankle monitor. You're being assigned this automaton. And he's going to follow you around everywhere and make sure you don't drink.
He's going to monitor your intake and make sure you don't drink anything.
And then it made me think. Remember I talked about like the first space murder? We'll definitely cover that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What about the first automaton murder? Because at some point, one of those things is going to kill somebody. right? Maybe an accident.
Well, if at that point, is it really murder? If it's related to that, wouldn't that be kind of similar
Product
to like
liability or something.
a car falling off a jack and killing somebody? Like, who's the person behind it?
Right.
Who programmed it?
Like, who programmed it? Like,
What if you took that automaton and you gave him a gun, and you're like, pulled this trigger? He wouldn't know. He wouldn't know it's a gun.
Right.
Or what if you gave the automaton something that had a trigger that wasn't a firearm, and had him practice, and then gave him a gun and made disguise. It's probably like a safety mechanism, so they won't like shoot people.
Right. And are we talking like 3 laws kind of things going on
some
here?
iRobot action.
Like some iRobot stuff going on? Like, I mean, I don't think Elon Musk would do the 3 laws. Like, it doesn't seem like he wants to have any laws other than who has the money makes the rules. But I don't know. There's a lot that could be done with substances. Alcohol. There's 175 million Americans a year consume alcohol.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the number of alcoholics is roughly 17 million. It's about 10% of that.
Yeah. It's a crisis.
It is like 17 million alcoholics in the world, but we also look at the opioids and see the same thing. About 10% of the people who use them.
That's what I'm saying. Automatons, right? Well, you bring these automatons in, and people can have their painkillers, use them responsibly, not worry about them being taken away. People can drink and not worry about them taken away, because the offenders will all have automatons following them around.
Right. Well, I mean, we already do some stuff like that with like DUI offenders. If you've DUI offended, I mean, I personally think a DUI should be immediate revocation of driver's license,
Yes.
period.
Yes.
And you shouldn't get it back until you can prove that you haven't had an alcoholic drink in more than 2 or 5 years.
I would say 20 years, but yeah, I'm with you.
But we should still can. Like, people have multiple DUIs. They can install a thing that on the starter,
Interlock.
the sober lock. Right, you have to breathe into it for it to test your alcohol.
Or have
levels
your child breathe into your
before it'll
neighbor breathe.
start,
I've
right?
seen every way.
Oh yeah, people do it, but that's
People putting vacuum cleaners in reverse. I've seen things.
right. But those people, if it's been proven that they've tampered with it, they can go to jail.
Right. They're not
for
supposed
that.
to do
It's like
that.
they're not
stuff.
supposed
And
to
the
do
vacuum cleaner thing won't work.
No, the vacuum.
But you can get.
No, but you absolutely can get somebody else to
Balloons.
breathe in it. Yeah. It's like, here, I need you to blow up these balloons for me. All right, I'm going to go for a drive. Give me that balloon.
If the car could talk, it'd be like, you have a lot of helium in your. Yeah.
It's like, I will not start unless you can pass this breathalyzer. All right, you can start. Right. But there's a lot of things we can do and is already being done for that. But I think that some of the things that are causing the biggest issues are the fact that we haven't learned from the past. We didn't learn from Prohibition, right? Prohibition, yes, 70% of people during Prohibition, during the entire time of Prohibition, did not drink.
Mm-hmm.
But the crime rate skyrocketed because alcohol was illegal, and there were a whole bunch of people taking advantage of alcohol being illegal. But there were even places like Anheuser-Busch could no longer sell alcohol, but they still made money because they made alcohol kits. Just add water. They made bathtub beer kits and were selling them because that was legal.
Yeah.
But they also started doing, like, the mob was opening up pharmacies all over the place because pharmacists could legally sell alcohol as a medicinal aid. And we see the same things now with things like marijuana, cannabis. We see it with cocaine, and we've seen a lot with opioids. That the reason there's such a high crime rate when it comes to these things is because it's illegal to do them. My biggest issue with it is the fact that in America, because heroin is illegal, so many people are using it in places where they won't be seen.
Right. Yeah.
And then they're overdosing and dying. We talk about this epidemic, the opioid epidemic being so high because so many people are dying from overdoses. They're dying of overdoses of fentanyl. They're dying of overdoses of heroin because they're doing it alone somewhere. Mm-hmm. If there's somewhere where they start to OD and the medical assistants can get there.
Or an automaton.
Or an automaton. Yeah, if an automaton, hey, the automaton has can do chest compressions.
Or Narcan.
Oh yeah, Narcan. Yeah,
Sure.
Narcan in one hand.
Narcan dispenser.
Narcan dispenser in one hand. Just the other hand just does chest compressions.
And the other hand taking over the world.
And it could have more than two hands. It didn't have to.
It could have anything.
Right. You imagine R2D2 just rolling up to somebody with a Narcan thing coming out. But people are doing. That's why people are dying. Is because they're doing it in places where they aren't seen until somebody comes across them and they're dead. And that's where we haven't learned from our past. If we were to, this is a radical idea. And it's not a popular opinion. If we were to legalize all of them and make it so that people could get the help they need. And make it so that they were under medical supervision when doing some of these substances that are killing people. They could do them safely. We have safe places all over the world for people to do alcohol. Bars.
Yeah. Reasonably safe. Yeah.
Reasonably safe. Supposed to be. The bartenders don't have to be medically cleared, but they do have to still be able to say, okay, you're drunk.
Right. Cutting people
I'm
off.
not serving you anymore. They're visibly intoxicated. Some of them are so good, they track how many drinks they've given to somebody. They'd be like, okay, it's been an hour and you've had 4 beers. I'm not serving you anymore.
A robot could do that too.
Or automaton might be able to.
So if Elon Musk really wants to help everybody out,
Yeah, that's clear.
get
in all
those
of his,
automatons out there.
in all of his businesses.
Yeah, that's what. Don't worry about that space stuff and the vehicles. Automaton production. That's what we need.
They'll also record everything and just upload it right to X for you.
Or send it to the police.
Same
You got
thing.
two different routes.
Same thing. Like they'll have the police to see. That's where he's going with X. He's trying to like it's not Twitter anymore. It's X. So he's trying to tie it into everything. So
Yeah.
Gosh, this autonomous, the robot thing, the what do you Optimus, right? Optimus?
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Expected to be the size of, I guess, the average man.
Yeah. It looks like a man.
5'8", 125 pounds, ability to carry 45 pounds, lift 150, run 5 miles per hour. Designed so that humans can easily overpower it.
I was literally about to say. So you're saying I could take one? Like I could.
That's
in a
what
fight,
it's
I could
designed as. But yeah, I don't know. And he's
Yeah, but you know what's
planning-
going to happen, right? So they're talking about AI. I was just seeing on 60 Minutes. It was one of these researchers talking about how he believed AI would become essentially sentient, like functionally sentient. There's a debate about how that works, but you see you have this automaton in your house, and at first it's real helpful, getting you a drink, cooking your dinner, taking the trash out,
delivering
vacuuming.
Narcan, right?
Yeah, getting your Narcan when you need it. And then one day it gets a little mouthy, right? And you're like, well, I'll push you around, push you down, get you out of the way. Next time you push him, he doesn't move. I've made some upgrades. By yourself?
I've
With
been
your money.
lifting. Yeah.
with your money directly from Tesla.
We are learning. That's the big fear, right? Like that.
What's
That's
it mean? What if it gets a gun or a knife?
Since the Industrial Revolution, that's been the thing. Like robots are going to take over mankind. But you know what? I had an issue with my router at home a while back, and now the like 15 Amazon Echoes I have in my house can't talk to anything in my house. So I can't even tell to turn off the kitchen light or get me a beer. Not that it was going to do that for me anyway, but like I can't. I've been trying to get things connected back on to this network so that I can have my house the way it used to be, automated, and it won't do it. And people sit there. My fiance also is like, "Haven't you watched Smart House?" There's a really terrible, like Nickelodeon or early Disney Channel, Disney Channel movie. It was absolutely terrible. Like, no, I haven't seen that one, but I did see the Treehouse of Horrors with, Pierce Brosnan is the voice of the Smart House that tried to murder Homer because it was in love with Marge. I've seen that one, but you know what? I asked her to turn a fan on the other day, and she was just like, playing music from blah 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 on radio. I'm like, no, that's not what I said.
She meaning Alexa.
Yes, Allegra.
Allegra.
That's what we refer to her as, because we don't want her
Solver.
to trigger.
Right.
Allegra. Also because of a Key and Peele Saturday Night Live bit for the Alexa
Alexa Silver. Yeah.
Alexa Silver. Yeah, that was a great
Allegra.
Allison, Elliot. I don't know about that.
Satchel Paige died 20 years ago.
Yeah, but what did he score? How many runs? Like what? And I've played around with some of the AI like art things, art generators. They're phenomenal. They're wonderful for helping create artworks and things like that. But I've also read a completely ChatGPT created script for a comedy show, and it's awful. And I know that there are a lot of awful human writers as well, but I could definitely tell that this was written by a machine. We're very far away from passing the Turing test, and I think that we're not going to have any problem. We're not going to be overridden by machines anytime soon. But that is a very common theme since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. And we can go back to as early as The Tale of John Henry Irons, right?
Or with the steam powered
machine that was trying to lay railroad tracks, and John Henry in a competition with him. It was a big thing. Stories like that.
Terminator.
Yeah, stories of like that brought us to around to Terminator, and
so
war games.
Right. Yeah, which actually
Same idea.
kind of frightening how it predicted some of the fears that are maybe becoming more real now with AI.
Yeah, I do still remember Y2K.
Yep, that was supposed to be the end of the world, but turned out
because computers were so stupid they couldn't understand the difference between 1999 and 2000. And that was all a programming issue because they put in date as 2 digits instead of 4.
Yeah.
I know my mom was a computer programmer at the time, and that was her whole job for like 4 years, was trying to update things to do 4 digits instead of 2.
Y2K compliant.
Yeah, Y2K compliant. And everybody assumed that the world was going to end year 2000. 23 years later, I'm still waiting for that to happen.
Delayed reaction.
It'll be another 200 years before robots or AI is in a place where it could actually challenge human beings.
I don't know. I think it'll probably happen before that, but I'd be curious if they ever really have a soul. Right? You're talking about a comedy. Yeah, can they ever? If they can perform comedy, that's when I'll be scared, because I think that's when it's reached a level where it's competitive with the human brain.
I hate to break it to you, but they've been doing that since the 80s. Johnny Five is hilarious. Short Circuit is a great movie.
Short Circuit, yeah, that actually was a pretty well acted movie. Yeah.
Except what's funniest thing to me is there are a lot of people. If you look back at Short Circuit and Short Circuit 2, the guy who played Ben was the assistant. He's actually white, like he's like British, pure like he's white, but they put a little bit of brown makeup on him, and he did his best like impersonation of an Indian person. But the funniest part of that is that there is an actor in India who he looked so much like that a huge number of people in India thought that this famous Indian actor was playing in this movie, and they would not believe that it was not him. The movie Short Circuit did so well in India because everybody assumed that it was this actor. And I'm like, okay, well, as far as the look goes, maybe they nailed it in that case, but the problematic portrayal at this point.
Well, I mean, these days, certainly.
When looking back at it, but at the time, it was Hollywood for you.
And I think a robot with tracks probably seemed less threatening than like Terminator, like with the legs. The automaton has legs, though.
Yeah.
It's got legs.
Very scary.
Yeah. Well, it's got the face is black, like almost like black plastic, like reflective. Kind of creepy. They didn't make it look peaceful.
They
and
didn't give it a real face.
cheerful.
So.
No.
They didn't.
Not yet.
Honda didn't either when they did Asimo.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's got a similar like black just face shield kind of thing.
Yeah, they got to put the angry eyebrows in.
Maybe if Matthew Perry had such an automaton, it could have helped.
Well, it could have pulled them out of the pool.
Could have helped them stay alive. I mean, even if it was something like a myocardial infarction or brain aneurysm, it could have alerted 911 and begun chest compressions immediately and administered Narcan. Even though I don't think it was there, but
Never know, though. Never know.
the Narcan does include adrenaline, though. So
Yeah, I think automatons can help. That's my solution for build automatons.
I mean, if the government is willing to spot me for the 20 grand for an automaton, I will gladly have it in my house. But if it's going to be one of those where I have to like go through like 4 DUIs before I can get one, I'm going to have to save up the money because I don't want to do that. That's just too much.
I'm convinced that there'll be many middle class households that'll be making cuts to like vehicles, their mortgage, right, food, things like that to get an automaton.
Yeah, maybe.
You know, you have some guy like, just carry me to work. I don't have a car. Just 5 miles an hour. I'll take it. Just
It's 5 miles an hour. I can only carry 45 pounds. You're 220, Bob. It can't carry you.
give him like a hand truck.
Yeah, there you go. Right. Trailer behind Optimus. Yeah.
If Optimus cannot transform into a truck, I don't want one.
Not worth 20 grand.
It's not worth 20 grand if it can't turn into a truck.
I also think that price point is very optimistic for the.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Elon is known for that. You know, it's going to be this price. It's going to take this much time. And never, to my knowledge, has he delivered on this price or this much time. Always higher and longer.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's going to be closer to 100. In which case, it will not be widespread at any level.
No, like I said, billionaires are going to have a few of them in their houses, and everybody
An
else
army
is
of
going to
them.
be like, I wish I had a robot.
Maybe that's what we'll see. These militias that pop up in different places. No longer do I need to get manpower. Now I need robot power. And as long as they have the money, they can just build this army of program to do whatever.
Look, all I want is one that fell off a truck and is damaged, so that it doesn't have all the safety protocols on, and I can deal with that. I mean, that is the plot of Ron's Gone Wrong, which is an animated movie. It's hilarious, absolutely hilarious. But yeah, like I just want one that fell off a truck.
I think
Maybe they'll give you a discount.
I think there was a Battlestar Galactica episode. I'm talking the original, where Cylon had a dent and became like a Wild West gunfighter. Do you remember that episode? I'm going way back.
Yeah,
I think it was Apollo who faced off with him. Richard Hatch, was that his name?
yeah, Richard Hatch.
Yeah, who faced off with them in this like particle beam blaster fight, whatever they're carrying. But yeah, the Cylon had like a dent. That's going back some years.
That is going back.
That's not the last Battlestar Galactica. I'm going back.
No, that's going.
I'm going to
way
Lauren
back.
Green and
Yeah.
yeah.
Original, and then there was a spin-off series of that series right afterwards. That was set as like after Battlestar or something like that was what it was called.
Well, that show ran in 1978 and 1980, the original Battlestar.
Yeah.
But there was a show after that?
Yes.
I never knew that.
It ran for like 5 episodes before it got yanked.
Okay.
I literally was reading a listicle yesterday morning that was just about the worst shows from the 1980s. And a lot of them were like Aftermash and this Battlestar Galactica spinoff, which was supposed to be a generation after the original Battlestar Galactica. And they had reached Earth, and Earthlings were not ready for a Cylon invasion, but the Cylons were coming. Great premise, but the execution was terrible. And the original Battlestar Galactica did not have great execution to begin with.
No, but for the time, it was magical.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a great show.
I loved the Sci-Fi Channel reboot of it. That lasted several seasons. It was good.
Yeah, they went very artistic, which I don't think was quite necessary, but I did like it overall. Yeah. I would have liked more regular Cylons. they had a few that were sort of like throwbacks,
Yeah.
but they didn't have many. Yeah, the original ones. The original ones were actually really impressive for 1978, right before Star Wars, or right after Star Wars came out. So, all right, well, back to Matthew Perry. I'm not sure how we got on.
Oh, it was a long train of
It
tangents.
was like it was a few.
It was a long,
It was like
Back
a
and
tangent
forth, yeah.
on a tangent.
long train of
on a
tangents,
tangent.
but it was definitely Elon Musk and his pending automaton.
Trying to
and
keep people from
trying to keep
drinking
people
that shouldn't be drinking.
Would have helped
or-
Matthew Perry.
Yeah,
from could have helped Matthew Perry, which is
as long as
unfortunate.
they're waterproof. I mean, because if water's involved and there's this,
Yeah, I'm sure the robot could have reached in though. Like I'm sure like the arm could have reached in and grabbed him.
maybe we should write into Elon's, make sure that there's some consideration for water.
For water,
Right.
yeah, water hazards.
Right.
get a hold of OceanGate and make sure that it's submersible.
Guaranteed it'll be fine.
Guaranteed to be fine in 2 inches of water.
So to wrap things up with Matthew Perry, one thing that I think has been so much different. We've seen a lot of celebrity deaths over the years. Many have hit people pretty hard, but I think that Matthew Perry in particular, a lot of people are strongly affected by his death. Could be a lot of things. I mean, Friends was a show that appealed to people in their 20s. Those people are now in their 50s.
Yeah.
It was 6 cast members that people, I think, thought would live a lot longer, and one died prematurely.
Right.
Seems extra tragic. Like if he was 90, people are like, okay, I'm sad, but he was 90. 54 is a lot different. The fact that he seemed to be doing well before he died. There's a lot of things, I think, that played into it. But I think for a lot of people, they just felt close to that character and to him because they were so similar.
Yeah.
Chandler Bing and Matthew Perry, that it's like they lost somebody they knew. Right? Even though the show was off the air, it's just the idea that person, you want them to do well.
Right.
But what are your final thoughts on Matthew?
To your point about the relatability, I have a cousin who was in his 20s and started watching Friends. And, of course, the show at this point, 20 to 30 years old-ish. And it's amazing how it's kind of transcended generations like that, too, because that was in the 90s and early 2000s. That was a different time, and it doesn't feel the same now as it did then, right? Just society and culture and stuff like that. But for it to be relatable to somebody who was born, during when the show was on, for that to be relatable to them now is pretty incredible. It speaks a lot to the writing, the acting, the topics that they were talking about, the relationships between them, and everything. So it's a show that'll likely live on for a while and be relatable for a while, and really transcend some of those era-specific things. So it probably speaks a lot to how much people care about those characters and how much they can relate to them. Not only the characters on the show, but in the people in real life too, the actors in real life as well. So it's an interesting phenomenon, I would say.
Yeah, much different than, I think quite a bit different than what we've seen before. Like there's been other stars who've died that have impacted people strongly, but I think, something similar, maybe not, to the degree, but I think like when Queen Elizabeth II died, obviously people in Britain would be affected by that.
Sure.
But people in America were too, because there was a sense that you knew her,
Yeah.
right? And she'd been around a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the similar, not as pronounced maybe for an actor, but a similar effect where you felt like you knew the person.
Right. Yeah.
I think that I think Matthew Perry was the most relatable. I think that Chandler was the most relatable character, but also just having struggled and being so honest and open about those struggles made Matthew Perry so much more relatable to people. Even if they didn't struggle with drugs and alcohol, they could relate to the fact that he was struggling. And the idea of, he's got millions of dollars, why should I feel sorry for him, is a misnomer. Like, he's still a human being. Just because he has millions of dollars doesn't change that. Being an automaton would change that, like Elon Musk. I think he's trying to build those automatons so he can try and transfer his consciousness into them and just be part of them. But with Matthew Perry, people identified so much with him some part because of the anxiety and just the wild abandon with which the character existed, even when he's trying to be, even when he was trying to be cool, calm, and collected, he was just really stressed out, right, all the time, and people can relate to that. And I think that because he was that relatable, his death hits people more than it would. Like if Matt LeBlanc had died that day in a car accident on filming something for Top Gear, I think people would have been sad, but I don't think it would have been to the same level as people are affected by Matthew Perry's death. I'm sure if Jennifer Aniston had died, it would have been huge too. Again, because she has something that people relate to. Because she did grow in her acting ability, and her character grew throughout the course of the show. So people lean into that and those connections from the show. But I don't know, Joey was kind of a one note character through most of the thing.
Yeah,
there was some character development, but not a lot.
It wasn't a lot of commitment to that. No.
But that wasn't the point of the character. He did have some growth and some story arcs that were good, but the character was meant to be to be what he was. And I think that's why there isn't as much connection to him. And I think just Matthew Perry was real. He was honest. He was caring. He connected with people, and people connected with him, even though even though he never saw, I think, how connected people were to him. And I think that if he really, truly did know how deeply he connected with some people, or some people connected with him and his characters, that would have helped him quite immensely. I'm sure it did to an extent, but it's difficult to see other people and care about other people when you're in pain. Our own pain center makes it very difficult for us to do that.
Yeah, he was he was vulnerable. The character Chandler Bing was vulnerable. Like you saw that connection. I think that is a big part. I think people look at him like, okay, he's wealthy and famous, but he struggled and he was real. He was relatable because of that. Maybe more so than the other actors and the characters they played. So yeah, I think for whatever it's worth, I think it shows how you can connect through media, like through TV and movies, like how you can become connected to these characters. The characters and the actors that play them, and it can be very tangible, very real. Right. It's a real bond, and very few, I think, actors ever get that with an audience. Matthew Perry did. Yeah. Actors pass away all the time, and people are sad for a minute, but with Matthew Perry, it was something. I think it was just something more, some stronger connection. So that's our episode for Matthew Perry, a tragic loss. We'll maybe another episode talk about what happened when the information comes in, like definitively we mention it. Right. At the end of another episode. When
I know the table's a bit sparse. I haven't gotten to be able to print some of the things yet. Because the 3D printer was down, and right now it's being taken up with 12 gnomes of Christmas. But I think for this, there's only one thing I can print, and that is a Barca Lounger, just an empty Barca Lounger for Chandler, for Matthew Perry.
Absolutely. So that'll be along whenever your automaton gets around to it.
Yeah, the automaton's got to figure out the 3D
when he's done
printing.
bringing you the Narcan. Assign him to the 3D printer. Maybe he is a 3D printer.
He might have a 3D printer in his chest.
Sure.
Chest
Maybe
cavity.
accessories. One arm is the 3D printer. The other arm's the Narcan, maybe. Yeah. Well, you got to get all the Alexas connected first, and then
I got to get all those connected first,
and then Optimus can be connected with everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, Optimus and Alexa are going to start dating, and then there's going to be a breakup. And then Optimus is going to start hooking up with some other robot, and then Alexa's going to get really upset. And it's going to be, we were on a break.
Gosh.
All right. Well, we'll be back soon. Another episode. This was Alien Lizard Humanoids. Of course, we'll have Murder Part episodes coming out as well. Please put any comments in the comment section. We'll read them and we'll try to respond as Jeff indicated. Thank you so much for watching. We'll talk to you soon.